Your first point, you've worked with them all a little bit. You've worked with TREX Elevations, you've worked with Fortress Evolutions, and then just typical light gauge steel. Give us the give us the down low on those three options, and I don't know what to ask, but you tell me what you need to tell me about that.
Okay. So I did the Elevations first. Did a couple of projects with that. Did a real big one up in Boulder here. It was about 1,500 square feet. So that was, kind of got to really feel out how the Elevations was going to work out and perform.
I love those 2-day jobs. Those 2-day jobs where you can just go in, knock it out, right?
I'm going to just experiment with this. How much? 1,500 square feet. Yeah, sure. Okay, I was thinking more like 200, but fine.
Yeah, that job was actually probably one of the most miserable jobs we ever did. I managed to schedule that one in winter time up in a canyon on the north-facing house. And, we had a couple of days where we spent the first, hour and a half taking a scraper and scraping the ice out of the grooves so that we could put the hidden fasteners in the boards. It was a good time.
Yeah. I would have used a torch, I think. What did he do?
Right? There you go. That was sort of the TREX thing. Was pretty happy with it. My biggest knock on the TREX was the gauge of the steel. So the Elevations is an 18 gauge, and it just didn't have some of the spans that I wanted to get out of it. It's fantastic stuff for if you're going 15 feet, 14 feet, maybe 16, something like that. But it just didn't have the reach that we wanted for some of the bigger jobs that we ended up getting. And the powder coating on it tends to not be that fantastic. It seems like it's really easily damaged. So,
and just like that, it's showing up kind of scratched, or it chips off while you're working with it, or what?
Yeah, it comes. It's inevitable that you're going to get some damage. You guys know there's forklifts and there's strapping and there's everything else involved. So there's some product damage that's going to happen.
Yeah, not here. But, not yesterday. Not 3 lifts of Fibron on the ground yesterday off a semi. That didn't happen.
That's right. I didn't run over a coffee mug either. So
yeah.
I would think I would have taken the coffee mug. There's no chance that the damage of your coffee mug was the same. Yeah.
Right?
Ew.
I bet I didn't pay nearly as much for that mug. You guys probably paid a little bit more for that Fibron than I paid for that coffee mug.
It'll be the gift that keeps giving. We'll just continue to find scratch boards for the next few months out of that, probably. But
right. So the TREX, though, it's honestly, and other guys, there's a guy out on a Newcastle build that does a ton of Elevations, and we've talked. The powder coating on it is just, man, you look at it sideways and it scratches.
Interesting.
And it's that real, it's TREX, so it's this super unique color, and you got to buy their special touch-up paint that costs you $15 for a tiny little can, and it's kind of frustrating as a builder when you got to get dialed into something that's specialized.
It's so frustrating because it's not like you don't want that stuff to show up scratched. You want the finished product to look good. So it's like, listen, I've invested the money in the steel framing. I've bought your expensive steel framing. So at least sell me the touch-up kit cheap, because I can't get it anywhere else. And it's like the other option is I don't touch this up, and and then my customer tells all of their friends, oh yeah, the TREX framing scratch is super easy because you don't want to fix it. You know what I mean? It's just like,
and rusting.
Yeah, you've got got me on the hook.
You give me the touch up with you get the joist with the big scratch, and then that brown has that nice rust streak through it because you didn't want to do the touch up work.
I feel like our negotiations with TREX on a sponsorship for this podcast are taking a massive hit right now.
Huge. It's unlikely. It's unlikely we're going to get it on this one.
This is not the one to show them.
But I don't know. Like
My Trex rep is unfriending me as we speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I just think that it's really, like, Shane and I talk about this all the time with this podcast. The reason we don't take sponsorships is because if we did, I'd be here defending that like crazy. And it's like, that's not why we started this thing.
But
I want to hear the truth. I want to know what's wrong with it.
Exactly. Everybody listening wants to know like what the actual advantages are between these two brands. The other thing is, sorry, this is getting a little bit off topic, but while we're on the topic of Trex, I think it was Adam Darova in these groups too that said like he's big onto the deckers bandwagon right now, and he's like nothing. He doesn't want to touch Trex at all, and he's been vocal about it, and people were like, yeah, like dude, like Trex is watching, whatever, right? Yeah. And he's like, listen. It's just that Decker's board is the best board out there right now. I have no doubt that the next better board or best board is going to come from Trex. It'll be Trex, the next good one. And so for the same reason, like the same thing we're talking about now, I am sure Trex on their end, you know, has smart enough people to understand that they shouldn't take offense to these kinds of things. It's opportunity to make a better product. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Listen, the guy that uses our stuff,
I'm hoping so.
Right? The guy that uses our stuff like crazy and has used competitors' products is saying our finish is coming off a little bit easier. Maybe we need to bake that on a little thicker or something, right?
Hopefully.
So right? And like they didn't become number one by not listening. So hopefully that's the result of this. But anyways, continue on, Scott.
Let's hope. I know initially going out to the Trex tour, they were real defensive about the product, the Elevations product, and you know they'd paid all the money to get the testing and this and that, and so the guy that was running that program at the time was pretty standoffish about getting any feedback or negative comments on the framing. It was kind of frustrating.
Yeah, that's no good.
I think early on you always end up being defensive because it's like it's his child. You know what I mean?
That's like why they're almost like they're neat. Like it's great to be able to go to the guy that's responsible for things sometimes that's the closest to it. But the other problem with that is he's the closest to it. Mm-hmm. He's the most emotionally attached, and he's most likely to be offended if you say something that's not favorable, right?
Yeah, that's got to work its way through channels of like
somebody needs to filter that a little bit.
Yep.
And then come back, and then they can dress up the words a little bit and like, listen, we're getting this feedback. Here's the stats. This isn't just an emotional response. It's not just this guy. People are saying kind of thing, right? So.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then, so the last thing, elevations wise, is they, at least for me, the thing that was super frustrating was they put out, it's a C-channel joist, 18 gauge, like I said, but they put it out in an 8-inch and then didn't make the adjustments to their fascia. So you've got this great 8-inch board and 8-inch track and all of this, and then you can't put a standard riser board fascia on it. You got to buy the 12-inch fascia and then have the big hang down. And it was like, come on, guys, if you're going to be marketing as a system, why don't we make it, add 3/4 of an inch to that 8-inch fascia so it covers your product?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it wouldn't hurt if it overhung wood by that much, right? Like if you did a 2x8 that was treated and the fascia hung down a little bit, that wouldn't matter at all. Like
no, it'd be probably a good thing.
Probably be fine.
A little bit more, right? A little bit hang. Yeah, that's interesting. Right. Good. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, be a heavier overhang because obviously the big thing with the steel is the 8-inch. The measurements aren't nominal with steel. It's a legit 8-inch, and if an 8-inch joist, it's actually 8, not the 7 1/4.
Right. So if you had to do two positives for the Elevations framing, what was good about it?
Oh, I mean the spans are still fantastic. It's and this Fortress, the light gauge, stocking it as a builder, it's so much easier to stock. You can carry. One guy trying to carry around a 20-foot 2x12 stick is pretty much a handful. And in the Elevations, you can carry 4, 6, 20-foot pieces at a time. Right. And it's like no big deal.
You should see some of our yard guys. They can carry 4 20-footers.
Yeah, I could when I was younger. I don't try that nonsense
all
anymore.
back is totally shot. Oh.
Right. The other the other big thing for TREX is it's TREX. So you got the name. If you're talking to a client, you've got that name backing it. They did have they had the engineering done, so that process has been completed for contractors. You can draw up a plan and elevations and go to a building department and say, hey, here's the engineering, here's the code compliance report. And, that really helps with the permitting process because the engineering's already been done on the product.
Awesome.
So that's a big plus for the TREX as well. Fortress, I know when they first hit market, we're struggling with that, but I talked to those guys and made sure before we got on together, and Fortress got their ducks in a row on that too now. So they've got their engineering and they've got their code compliance stamps too. So that's a big plus for both systems, actually.
Yeah, they had told us last time we talked to anybody about that, they had said that they had, I think it was 2 engineers in Canada, one in Calgary, one in Toronto, that they would actually send every job to those engineers to stamp off on like site specific plans, not just general engineering, like, yes, it can span this. Like, they actually would send, like, here's the cut list and here's how the shape and size of the deck, the blueprints essentially, and they would stamp those plans. I don't know if that's how that ended up happening.
I feel like they were doing that in Canada because a lot of our engineering needs to be site specific. Like, if you do a set of piles, we can't say that a helical screw pile is just good. It has to be right on there, the address that it's going in, and then it has to be stamped for that address. And so,
yeah, the helical piles we use are same thing. The helical piles are job specific, but they will take most of the building departments out here now will take the code compliance stamp. And that was, I know with elevations, that was the big problem when they first came to market here, is that they had the engineering done, but the firm that did the engineering was out of Florida. And so the Colorado departments were like, well, that's a Florida engineer, we're not going to take it.
Right.
So now that they've actually invested the money with Intertech and got that code compliance form, that took that hurdle out of the way for the building departments as far as getting the permits for the elevations stuff.
Perfect.
Good.